Okay, so I think we are live now. Thank you. So we will start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from United Nations in New York, and welcome to our webinar on reimagining cooperation on sport for persons with disabilities, leaving no one behind. My name is Amin Lamrabat. I'm an information officer at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, Divisions for Inclusive Social Development. I am very pleased to facilitate the first part of this important event. But before we get started, I would like to go over a few practical items. The webinar will be recorded and live streamed on our YouTube channel. The link is available on the chat. Sign language interpretation and closed captions will be provided during this webinar. The link to the closed captions is available on the chat. You will also have the opportunity to ask your questions through the Q&A function. Please use the chat box just for comments or sharing resources on the topic of this event. I will really appreciate if all the speakers mute their sound and keep their camera on when they don't speak. Also, I would like to remind all the speakers to respect the time. We will let you know if you go over your time, but we appreciate if you respect the time. Now, on behalf of UNDESA, I would like to thank all of our partners, speakers, and the audience who are joining us today to discuss this important issue related to sport and persons with disabilities. UNDESA is committed to supporting coordinated efforts for advancing sport for development and peace. At the international level, we have the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its SDGs, which they provide prospects for inclusive sport in society. This event has been conceived to raise awareness and identify innovative solutions to recovering better from COVID-19 pandemic, with a focus on building more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable societies. This is by engaging also persons with disabilities to sport. So for persons with disabilities, sport has the power to reduce stigma and discrimination. The sport provides a forum to enable them to build valuable social skills used to advocate for change. Today, with the current pandemic, COVID-19, many persons with disabilities have limited access to organize, develop, and participate in sport activities. So we have a rich agenda today, and without further ado, we have also a group of excellent speakers. We will now begin the opening session. It's my great honor to introduce Ms. Daniela Bass. She's the Director of the Division for Inclusive Social Development at UNDESA, who will deliver her opening remarks. Ms. Bass, you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, Excellencies, allow me to open the dance, as we say in Italian, and ladies and gentlemen and experts, I wish to welcome you to this very important webinar, as my colleague Amin just said, on sport, organized by the division that I have the honor to lead it, in DESA, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, on reimagining cooperation on sport for and with persons with disabilities, so to leave no one behind. I will try to optimize the time I have, which are about 4 minutes, without speaking too fast, though, to allow the interpreters, the sign language interpreters, to follow up what I'm saying. So more and more people, either because of aging, natural disasters, or man-made disasters like wars, besides due to medical reasons, acquire disabilities every day. Physical, sensory, mental, behavioral, or invisible ones. And we are taking and talking about well above 1 billion people. We usually say around 1 billion people in the world have some form of disability, but it is much higher, the number, if you think of what I just mentioned now. And also the present COVID pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic is causing, in many who suffered and recovered from this virus, various forms of disabling conditions, either temporarily or permanently. So indeed, this global outbreak of COVID-19 has resulted in closure of gyms, stadia, pools, dance and fitness studios, physiotherapeutic centers for those who need physiotherapy, that kind of physical movement, parks and playgrounds. And many individuals are therefore not able to actively participate in the regular individual or group sporting or physical activities outside their homes. And this physical distancing impacts even more persons with disabilities and their ability to participate in sport and physical activities to keep strong and healthy. And what about athletes with disabilities and their training in order to be able to participate to many major sport mega events ahead of us? So this applies to athletes with disabilities and also spectators with disabilities. It's in any case being part of sportive activities. So my question is also, what are the production and supply chain on sport related products and services and other industries, such as the media industry, the tourism industry, the transportation industry, the hotel chain industry, the sport equipment industry, the technical devices industry? What are they doing to reimagine cooperation and build back better during and after COVID-19 to assure that sport and persons with disabilities are fully included, valued, and active? So this is the space the division in DESA provides today to discuss concrete solutions and examples of good practices. In fact, as you may recall, with the closure of the UN Office of the Special Envoy of the Secretary General on Sport and Development in 2017, the substantive portfolio on sport for development and peace was moved by the UN Secretary General to the UN Secretariat and transferred to the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Mr. Monzani, you have to switch off your mic.
Sorry,
right?
yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So as I said, in collaboration with other offices of the UN Secretariat globally, UN agencies, funds and programs, and many other relevant stakeholders across the civil society, academia, and beyond, DESA draws on its convening power and its normative and analytical work to support member states. Therefore, it was due time to convene this webinar today. And UN DESA, as the lead entity, providing support to the review and follow-up of the 2030 agenda and also supporting the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the range of intergovernmental processes and mechanisms, addresses the social and economic dimensions of sustainable development, such as poverty, inequality, and being the focal point in the UN system for vulnerable social groups, including persons with disabilities. It promotes their participation and inclusion in all dimensions of life, including sport and physical activities. Lastly, I wish to share with you all that we are organizing on the 7th of December. The date has to be confirmed, but it is sure almost 99%, a virtual sport for development and peace multi-stakeholder dialogue. And an invite and the concept note will soon be sent. And we do hope to see you there again. Now, the webinar on the 7th of December will focus on sport and technology, with a focus on digital technology, in the lead up to the Commission for Social Development next February 2021, and which has as theme of the Commission, digital technologies, well-being, and social development. So the outcome of today will be an important piece of information for the Commission on Social Development, and the outcome will also be disseminated through various media to create more awareness and have all stakeholders, the private sector included, various, the academia and NGOs and the UN and member states and athletes and persons with disabilities who practice physical activities. So all of us to be engaged and take pragmatic actions more than diagnosis today. We know the diagnosis, we know the issues are. Let's talk about pragmatic actions to increase cooperation and partnerships on sport and disability-related matters Thank you so much. And now, Your Excellencies, we would like to hear your word and your experiences in your relative countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bas, for your insightful remarks. I would like now to invite Her Excellency Ms. Aliya Ahmed Saif Al Thani, Ambassador at the Permanent Mission of the State of Qatar to the United Nations, to deliver her welcome remarks. Ambassador, you have now the floor.
Thank you so much, Amin. And of course, good morning, dear colleagues. I want to thank Mrs. Danielle Labas, of course, for bringing us together on a very timely discussion. And let me go straight forward to the topic. Of course, let me start by noting the United Nations Group of Friends on Sports for Development and Peace, which I have the honor and pleasure of co-chairing its work together with my dear colleague and friend, Ambassador Isabel Bicot, the permanent representative of Monaco to the United Nations. The group, of course, has paid particular attention to the impact of the COVID-19 on persons with disabilities, of course, including limited or no access including paying attention that they have the full access to sporting and recreational activities, as also emphasized in our joint statement on the impact of COVID-19 on sport, physical activity, and well-being, and its effects on social development that was adopted by 118 member states last June. The joint statement, of course, emphasizes the importance of providing sporting opportunities for everyone, including persons with disabilities, without any kind of discrimination, and a commitment to include sport and physical activity in recovery plans and building back better. Dear colleagues, I'm very happy, of course, today to share briefly as well the work that is being undergoing in Qatar in preparations for hosting the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Doha. We have worked hard to ensure sport in Qatar is for all, and most importantly, for persons with disabilities. We look at the 2022 FIFA World Cup that will be held in Qatar as a transformative event and as a vehicle for social change in the region and beyond, and as a strong tool to break stereotypes. In the wake of the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, Generation Amazing, a FIFA World Cup legacy program launched on the eve of the International Day on Sports and Peace last April, live-streamed sports-related sessions. The aim is to offer an online program and introduces an exciting range of physical and mentally stimulating online sessions formats unique to Generation Amazing. They wanted to find a way that participants and wider audiences, including persons with disabilities, could continue to benefit from sports activities safely at home, whether through offering insight about the different ways it promotes keeping healthy or learning key life skills through football. Generation Amazing, of course, as well collaborated with a very well-known organization in Qatar, the Qatari Foundation for Science, Education, and Community Development, to deliver a disability awareness workshops series for coaches working with children and youth in Qatar. This program, of course, aims to help create new pathways for people of all abilities to enjoy sports. Coaches learned how to use ways to implement teaching resources in the workshops for people with disabilities. Inclusion, of course, is one of our core values, and giving all children and youth the chance to take on essential life skills like communication, leadership, and teamwork through such engaging sports like football. Again, we view the 2022 World Cup as a catalyst to make the world of sports more accessible and inclusive to all, leaving a lasting legacy for people with disabilities and an example for the rest of the world to follow. Inclusive design is being implemented in all the stadiums for the World Cup being constructed, and accessibility is at the core of the design for the venues. In terms of course, developing policies that deal with sports for all recovers better for people with disabilities, Qatar established the Accessibility Forum. It comprises over 30 organizations, advising the World Cup organizers on the needs of people with disabilities in relation to all aspects of the World Cup, including tournament infrastructure, tourism, and public transport. Most importantly, they test and evaluate plans before they are implemented to ensure that the best outcomes for people with disabilities. Very recently, 20 of its members recently visited one of the major stadiums for the World Cup, which is known as the Education City, that would host 40,000 seat stadium to review its accessibility feature. I will stop here, and again, I want to thank Ms. Daniela for this opportunity, and I look forward to this very engaging discussion. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you, Ambassador, for these insightful welcome remarks. I would like now to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Isabelle Picot, Ambassador at the Permanent Mission of the Principality of Monaco to the United Nations, to deliver her welcome remarks. Ambassador, you have now the floor.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you this morning. But first of all, I want to praise Daniela Bass for relentless commitment at the helm of the division for inclusive sustainable development to promote sport as a vehicle for achieving the SDGs. As it has already been mentioned, the pandemic has affected with greater impact the most vulnerable, and among them, people with disabilities. So if there was any doubt of the necessity of physical activity for body and mind these last months, I've brought this to center stage by the restriction imposed in our lives to contain the pandemic. So I won't mention again the declaration that was adopted by more than 100 states to support the policy brief that had been produced by DESA. So we are now working for the biannual resolution at the United Nations, because this is our role as a permanent representative and as co-chair of the group of friends. So this is important, and we need always to remind people that we have the legal instruments to act, and we need to be more focused on what the real need is. And for Monaco, I will just mention two very brief examples. The first one is road safety. You know how much lives are claimed by accidents. What we forget also that people remain disabled. Some don't have access to medical care, and especially in developing countries. So I want to give that example because Princess Serena Inés, Princess Charlene of Monaco, is one of the ambassadors of the FIA for road safety. And we need to use more role models. And as a role model, I would like to cite today the FIA Disability and Accessibility Commission President and co-founder of charity Spinal Tract, the racing driver, Miss Natalie McGloin, who has been nominated by the Sunday Times in the category of Sportswoman of the Year Awards 2020. So it's interesting that she's been nominated in the Sportswoman of the Year Awards because she is a racing driver, and when she's on the grid, she's next to men racing alongside her. So she is wholeheartedly supported by the Monaco-based Venturi Formula E team, principal Susie Wolf, and organization Dare to Be Different. So this is an amazing role model. She was disabled after breaking her neck in a car accident when she was 16, and here she is a very complete athlete. But you don't have to be an athlete to be able to practice sport. And here I would like to mention a Monaco-based organization. The name is Monaco Disease Power. And this is where the role of parents, of community comes into play. That organization was started by a mother who had a disabled child, and she wanted her child to be able to be physically active. That child loves skiing and horseback riding. So she started that foundation, that organization, And this organization also organize rugby tournaments for disabled children. And it's amazing when at the community level, you can build, and then because authorities see the important role that you are playing, they come and help. So I think it's very important to pay tribute to those people, and they are the light for the government officials, the other NGOs, to form partnership and to bring real life in the everyday life of people. So I'm looking forward to listening to the ideas, and I am convinced that CSOFD, and thank you, Daniela, for announcing the meeting in December, because I do believe that by using better the digital technologies that is at our disposal, we will be able to reach more people, and we need to put an emphasis on activities that can be made at home or in the parks, very simple things for everyone to be active. So thank you very much for including me. At the UN, we keep working in our roles at a representative of governments, but I do believe that the real change is coming from the grassroots level, for people who are examples to others, and that them convince authorities to get involved and help with financing and support. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to hearing the different suggestions.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for these insightful welcome remarks. I would like now to invite His Excellency, Mr. Kimura Tetsuya, Ambassador at the Permanent Mission of Japan to the United Nations, to deliver his welcome remarks. Ambassador, you have now the floor.
Thank you and good morning. I thank DESA and Ms. Daniela Bass for holding the important event. I'm also delighted to be with the participants to this webinar, many of whom I believe are athletes or sports fans. During COVID-19, many of us have been experiencing lives without sports, lives without connection with people, or lives without communication. Now we are trying hard to cope with the impact of this pandemic and starting to live our lives with sports again, bringing back our human connection. The COVID-19 pandemic is causing a human security crisis across the world, striking the most vulnerable, including people with disabilities. We must recall and keep our promises, leave no one behind. Solidarity and partnership are needed more than ever at every level, everywhere. On 24 March, when the postponement of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games was announced, Japan pledged to host the Tokyo 2020 Games next summer as proof that humanity has defeated the pandemic. The Tokyo 2020 Games will prove human potential and serve as a symbol of solidarity and partnership. Japan is making every effort to ensure safe and secure delivery of the event for all athletes and sports fans, including those with disabilities, demonstrating the role of sports in building more equal, inclusive, and sustainable societies. Since I myself served as Director General of the Japan Sports Agency in Tokyo, I attach importance on cooperation in the field of sport with the member states, the relevant organizations, as well as sports fans here in New York and around the world. Indeed, sports play an important role in advancing sustainable, inclusive development, as recognized in the Secretary General's report on this issue. Sports will also be a key to building our society back better in the current context. Japan has taken various steps to support athletes with disabilities amid this pandemic. The Japan Sports Agency has established a network within the government and the National Olympic and Paralympic committees to help national federations understand the latest COVID-19 information and better address challenges during this pandemic. Furthermore, the agency has been providing assistance to affected athletes, instructors, and sports fans including those with disabilities, for their safe return to sports and physical activities. Education is also essential for better recovery. The Tokyo 2020 Games will leave behind legacies after the Games by creating educational activities for children. Our government supports schools across the country to organize special events in which children, including those with disabilities, can learn the spirit of the Olympic and Paralympic movement and experience parasports. In conclusion, we believe that the Tokyo 2020 Games will be a great opportunity to embrace diversity and accelerate an inclusive society with people with disabilities and with people from all around the world and different walks of life. Japan also continued to make its utmost effort to increase accessibility for persons with disabilities by a whole of society approach. Japan looks forward to a successful Tokyo 2020 Games next summer and promotes inclusive and accessible development, including for persons with disabilities worldwide. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for these insightful welcome remarks. I would like now to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Maria Angela Zappia, Ambassador at the Permanent Mission of Italy to the United Nations, to deliver her welcome remarks. Ambassador, you have now the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your facilitation, and of course, thank you to Daniela. Daniela, you're a force, and this seminar shows again how important it is to have you in DESA, that I also want to thank. It's a pleasure to open this seminar, of course, with my friends, the ambassadors of Qatar and Monaco, and with the friend Mr. Kimura from Japan. Thank you so much. Of course, we have been witnessing during these long months how much the impact of COVID-19 has deepened existing inequalities, including for the world's more than 1 billion persons with disability. And I think the Secretary General's thematic brief on disability inclusive response to COVID-19 has shown to what extent persons with disability are disadvantaged by the socioeconomic consequences of COVID-19. I just want to mention that since the beginning of the pandemic, the Italian government has put in place specific measures defined by the newly established Office for Policies for People with Disabilities, which reports directly to the Office of the Prime Minister, to make sure that no one would be left behind in this difficult situation. So a number of urgent provisions for assistance to pupils with disabilities through services aimed at supporting distant learning were adopted, together with provision of school resources specifically intended for students with specific learning disabilities and other special education needs, the setup of special units designed to guarantee the delivery of home health and social health services in favor of people with disability presenting conditions of fragility, economic measures for the protection of the health and work of people with disabilities, including the provision of extraordinary leave for parents of people with disabilities and priority criteria for accessing smart working, for employees with disability or having a person with disability in their family. So a number of measures, including further support to the Fund for Assistance to People with Serious Disabilities without family support. So another thing that I want to underline, that specific allocation were given for LIS interpreters, and I want to thank you, the interpreter here right now, for all the communication by the Civil Protection and the Prime Minister. During an emergency, more than ever, communication is key to inclusion, and it is essential to make sure that institutional communication is fully accessible, providing all the necessary information to all, so that we don't leave anyone behind. Of course, there were also some specific measures taken for sports for people with disability, and I think there was a special attention to precisely what my colleagues were saying before, to the need also to continue some activity. So the very strict measures that were adopted during the lockdown, for instance, were also adopted by looking at people with disabilities and providing some exceptions, for instance, to the limitations that were ruled for all the rest of the population in terms of, for instance, reducing social distancing between the person with disability and the person who has to assist them, allowing anyway, in spite of the lockdowns, the possibility to have rehabilitation activities for people needing them. So there was an attention specifically devoted to persons with disabilities. And this, of course, applied to sport specifically and to physical activities for persons with disability. And since I have the occasion now to do it, and I know this is something that will please very much also Daniela, I'm proud to announce that Italy is contributing $570,000 US dollar to fund a project on the social inclusion of children and youth with autism through sports, to be executed by UNDESA in cooperation with UNDP, UNICEF, and the UN country teams in the Dominican Republic, in Cuba and Panama, starting from January 2021. The project that was expressly designed together with the Division for Inclusive Social Development of DESA is aimed at strengthening the capacity of governments, civil society organizations, and sport associations to jointly elaborate plans for the full and effective inclusion through sport of persons with disability, with a specific focus on autism. At the same time, through the active involvement of trainers from the Italian NGO Progetto Filippide, it aims at developing the skills of sport instructors to train young people with autism and their family members and monitor their progress in sporting activities over time. With that, I really thank you again for this opportunity, and I leave you again the floor. I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for these insightful welcome remarks. Now we will move to our keynote speakers. I would like now first to invite Ms. Maria Soledad Cisternas. She's our special envoy of the UN Secretary General on Disability and Accessibility. Ms. Soledad, you have now the floor.
Thank you very much, Amine, and congratulations to Mrs. Daniela Paz for this important initiative. The practice of a sport is a human right according to CRPD, and this right is in direct connection to SDG 3 about to ensure the healthy life and well-being for all in all ages. The Global Action Plan for Physical Activities 2018 promote the access for all in the physical activities during the daily life, but it recognizes there are many disparities in this access in the world, including persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities face different barriers in the practice of sport and physical activities, such as lack of accessibility and or lack of enough training for teachers, coaches, and others for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in the practice of sport and physical activities. This attitude produces high sedentarism and the risk for the health in persons with disabilities and for social interaction of them. COVID-19 has highlighted gaps in legislation, public policies, and other services for persons with disabilities. The suspension of face-to-face classes in the school, as well as the suspension of other physical activities and competition, have produced an impact, a negative impact in persons with disabilities, especially in athletes with disabilities, with specific consequences, for example, stress, and in many cases, depressive mood. Therefore, civil society organizations and DPOs have designed different strategies for the practice of physical activities and sports during the confinement, and we can find them through internet in accessible ways. An interesting experience comes from Special Olympic. They prepared the family guide for the practice of physical activity during the confinement. They recommend to include the physical activity in the daily routine of the family, and with a systematic registration of these activities with a motivational aspect, such as family group photos. You know, last September, UN Secretary General presented his report about the sport as a global accelerator for peace and sustainable development for all, affirming that the United Nations has provided resources to maintain the practice of physical activity for all during the pandemic. And this initiative includes persons with disabilities. At the same time, he made a call to General Assembly to strengthen the governmental action and the cooperation between United Nations agencies with other stakeholders to include sport and physical activities in the post-pandemic recovery plans, including the use of digital technology in this purpose, and to promote the data collection statistics and the adoption of sports indicators in the practice of physical activities and sport during the pandemic. Taking into account the Decade for Action 2030, this document recommends supercharged ideas to solutions. In this order, after consulting DPOs, we can recommend, first, the full implementation of universal accessibility in sport facilities and stadiums. This is a key factor for the practice of sport and physical activities in equal condition with others in relation to persons with disabilities. I proposed in a high-level political forum the creation of global big data during and after the pandemic about accessibility as a good legacy for humanity for the future. Second, to rationalize the use of sport facilities and stadiums for persons with disabilities in equal condition with others. For example, the Paralympic movement has the same right than the Olympic movement in the use of sport facilities and stadiums. Both are the same priority without exclusion after the quarantines. Third, to train athletes with disabilities in inclusive preventive measures to COVID-19 inside sport facilities and stadiums, and to train teachers, coaches, and family members in the practice of the sports and physical activities for persons with disabilities in situation of normality and in situation of humanitarian emergencies, such as pandemic. It is relevant, leaving no one behind in the practice of sport and physical activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Soledad, for your excellent intervention. I would like now to play a video message by Her Excellency Ms. Mara Gabrilli. She's a senator and member of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD. We will play the video now, just 1 second.
Hello. In first place, I would like to thank Mrs. Daniela Bass for her commitment to making visible persons visible through sports. Then I would like to invite you to reflect of this sentence. The first step to victory is the desire to win. I have always adhered to this lesson of Mahatma Gandhi. With this knowledge in mind, in 1990, I decided to run an ultra marathon of 101 kilometers. In that time, I was not a quadriplegic person, but the movement has never left me. I'm still myself. The sports remember always who I am. I believe sports is the key to combat poverty and is the answer to achieve an inclusive world. My country, Brazil, had the honor of hosting the Paralympics in Rio. We were able to meet persons who overcome the disability, the poverty, the prejudice, and the fear of failure. They had arrived at Rio and conquered podiums, filled stadiums, gymnasiums, and touched everybody. This shows the world the subversive effect and the potential of any athletic with disabilities. Suppress our arrogance of believing that we are able to measure the capacity of the other person. That goes beyond sports, allows us to look to broaden the possibilities, even ours. We have the opportunity to develop a new mentality, more human and innovative. We need to work together for an inclusive world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabrilli, for your excellent intervention. And now we will begin our second part of the event, our panel discussion moderated by Ms. Hanifa Mazwi. She's a permanent representative to the UN and ECOSOC of the International Association of the Economic and Social Councils and similar institutions. Ms. Mazwi, the floor is now yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amin. Dear Daniela, Excellencies, distinguished panelists and guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to welcome you today to address this important topic, reimagining cooperation on sport for persons with disability through sport and leaving no one behind. Just by using the word reimagining, the Secretary General has already given us a jump start on exploring opportunities for initiatives on global progress through sports. I would like first to acknowledge the leadership of those member states this morning who are committed to increasing the quality and quantity of physical activity opportunities for persons with disability. Their proactive attitude enables them to move beyond the obstacle in order to find and implement adequate solutions. May everyone follow their lead. Our panel is composed of 5 experts, among them leader, athlete, UNICEF consultant, UNESCO project manager, coach and sport educator, administrative in sport, and also journalist, to name just a few of their expertise. They will examine cross-cutting and universal values of sport and how they are manifested with persons with disability. They will explore the legacy of past events. More broadly, they will look at ongoing policy, initiative, and best practices, and introduce new ideas to advance the core value of inclusion and linking sport to sustainable development goal as a tool. We will understand how sport changes people with disability in an equally profound way by empowering people with disability to realize their full potential and advocate for changes in society. However, common barriers include lack of understanding and awareness of how to include people with disability in sport, limited opportunity and programs for participation, training and competition, lack of accessible facilities, such as gymnasium and building, and limited accessibility to transportation, to name just a few. In addition, COVID-19 has aggravated the isolation of persons with disability, those access to sport, physical activity, and services is often already limited. The pandemic has brought dramatic economic changes that are transforming countries throughout the world. It's causing great disruption in traditional society with anxiety everywhere as people feel they are losing control of their life, their culture, their community, and even their place in the world. Sadly, the COVID-19 is reversing much of the progress made with the SDGs on poverty, healthcare, and education, among others. Leaving no one behind during the pandemic requires an ongoing effort, especially for children with disability who are already marginalized. As with natural disaster, it is the poorest and most vulnerable, including women, children, again, old persons with disability, migrants, and refugees, who are the most severely affected. Now, we are working to build back better. We have to create initiatives which enable sport to make a positive contribution to social inclusion and cohesion, understanding, and diversity. Teaching the world the value of social diversity and building a cooperative spirit will promote the objective of development and peace building. This webinar will be the occasion to highlight the importance of sport to build inclusive society. Let's start by my first panelist. His name is Italo Dutra, who is head of UNICEF Education at UNICEF Brazil. Italo is his first name, not to be confused with Italo. Dear Italo.
Thank you, Hanifa. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm Italo from Brazil. I would like to thank Mrs. Daniela Bass and Hanifa for inviting us to this important event. I would briefly talk about a specific project that we've been developing here in Brazil since 2015, 14 before the Olympic Games in Rio. It is called Open Doors for Inclusion, and it is a teacher training program to use physical education as a tool to leverage inclusion of children with disabilities in regular schools. We started this program with blended education, presential and online activities. And after learning from these courses, we were able to offer a massive open online course for, and then we came from 2,000 teachers to more than 100,000 teachers being trained to use physical education as a tool to promote inclusion of children with disabilities in regular schools. This is a very important thing for us to share, because Brazil has improved the number of children with disabilities enrolled in regular schools, but usually physical education and physical activities are a barrier for children with disabilities to fulfill their right to education and their right to sports and to physical education in schools. This has the offer of the massive online open course that has now more than 100,000 teachers and managers from education systems enrolled, proves that there is a high demand for training programs to use physical activities and physical education to increase the inclusion of children with disabilities in the educational system. We have now been systematizing a bunch of best practices, and we are willing to share all of them. We started with the first set of best practices, but now with this online training course, we are willing to improve the number of it, and of course continue to offer this kind of opportunities for children and adolescents with disabilities in schools. Now, of course, we have to overcome the impacts of COVID-19 on education to continue the inclusion of children with disabilities. Brazil is one of the countries with has the school closed for the longest time, and now, of course, we are willing to pursue the inclusion of children with disabilities and also their right to sport and physical activities at school.
Well, thank you very much. It's very impressive to hear how many projects you have implemented remotely on education program. I want also to mention maybe the place that the government has to ensure learning continuity. And I want to add a word on the silent parent behind the children who are trying to cope with this remote teaching. So now I would like to present to you Victor Callis, Commissioner of the New York City Major Office for People with Disability. Victor, you are seen as an avid athlete. Your dedication, passion, and drive led to representing the United States on 1998 Paralympic sled hockey team Nagano, Japan. And in June 2012, you were appointed the Commissioner of the Major Office for People with Disability by Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and then reappointed by Mayor Bill de Blasio in 2014. I wish you another third, never two without three. With such a background and access to everyone and everything, and your legendary energy in focusing on ability and not disability, what are the priority actions do you intend to take in 2021 and 2022 to ensure that sport for all recover better for persons with disabilities? And how does this align with a decade of action in relation to infrastructure and economy, which was already mentioned by Daniela in her opening remark? I just want to add, bearing in mind that the UN Decade for Action, it's a worldwide push. It's a call for accelerating sustainable solutions to implement the SDG, ranging from poverty to climate change, inequality for conclusion, and financial gap. So the floor is yours with all these requests and waiting for your answer. Victor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Hanifa. Thank you, Danielle Abbas. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for having me here today. Sport is important. And as a Paralympic athlete myself, I understand how we have to reimagine our world since COVID. And there are plenty of athletes doing some extraordinary things right now, working to ensure that they can train during these times, especially for the Tokyo Games. And athletes with disabilities want to be part of society, and ensuring that everything that we do as a city includes them. Making sure that our parks and recreation facilities are accessible for people with disabilities, making sure that our recreation departments are providing the adaptive sports that we know, working with all of our schools to ensure that kids with disabilities have access to adaptive sports. So all these things are important. It's the commitment to the city of New York to be able to continue to do this. During COVID, we have certainly learned lots of things that people with disabilities long for, these opportunities online, that they can connect with their peers and be able to do things. We've created adaptive programming to work out with basic soup cans for strengthening. We've have done sit aerobic programs for people with disabilities during COVID, and all other types of activities online. We've worked with adaptive organizations like New York Road Runners and Achilles Track Club to promote exercise programs through these difficult times. And as we open up a little bit more here and there, we keep our social distances, we wear our masks, and we learn to train in those environments, because people with disabilities have been learning to adapt for a long time. It's part of our nature. We reimagine everything, and we're able to do this. The SDGs and sport, it breaks down ableism in a lot of ways, and sport is important to be able to move things forward. And as we continue to look into the future and ensuring that people are providing accessibility on every way, it's important. But we have to be cognizant as we move online that there are many people with disabilities that we are leaving behind because of the digital divide. And we have to ensure that we're providing people with the connected devices and the internet connections to be able to get to these programs. And there's a lot of people, specifically in the Black and Brown communities, that do not have access to this. And the city of New York is committed to making sure that kids with disabilities throughout this pandemic have these connected devices and have this internet connection so they can participate just like everyone else, and we don't leave anybody behind.
Thank you very much, Victor, especially to remind us about the digital world. We have to ensure definitively equitable access to digital skills and training, particularly for marginalized population. Bridging the digital divide requires collaboration and cooperation with all stakeholders. So you didn't miss it. It's also in the agenda of a division for December. But I would like to salute the political men, because you are really putting at use all these skills that you have acquired: discipline, rigidity, integrity. We can feel them when you talk, and you are totally empowered. And I'm hoping to hear the name of your third mayor. So now I would like now to go to my third panelist, Ms. Catherine Carty. She is the UNESCO co-chair project manager Institute Technology at Raleigh, Ireland. And her project is transforming the lives of people with disability, their families and communities in physical education, sport, fitness, recreation. I think that it's a project for a lifetime. Catherine, you are working directly on advancing a specific policy areas of a Kazan action plan relating to disability, and then inclusion, access, contribution to the SDG, and of course, integrity. You are also measuring the contribution of sport, physical education, and physical activity to the Sustainable Development Goal. Your academic work is built on indicators, and you master strategic issue in international sport policy. So in a very humble way in front of all your academic achievement. We would like to hear more about this project and the result that you have gained since the last 6 years that the project is on. The floor is yours, dear Catherine.
Thank you, Ms. Mazzuni, and thank you to Daniela Bass, and greetings, Your Excellencies, Special Envoy and Senator Gabrilli, and attendees. It's my pleasure to present on how we can leverage some of the work that has been ongoing in human rights and SDGs to support reimagining cooperation on sport for persons with disabilities, leaving no one behind. So paragraph 37 of the Sustainable Development Agenda, I think, marked a seminal moment for sport in leaving no one behind, calling for prioritized action around disability inclusion in and through sport. This is one that we as a community can embrace to advance practice, especially in this post-pandemic period. SDGs are underpinned by a human rights approach, and the CRPD affirms sport as a human right. Sport is also very cross-cutting, and we heard this from other speakers earlier, and has been used as a vehicle to support the realization of other rights across the convention, across education, health, work, employment, personal mobility, living independently and being included in your community, freedom from exploitation and abuse, awareness raising, all of which align with the Sustainable Development Goals and targets. This shows the breadth and depth of the impact that sport has in the lives of persons with disabilities, and this breadth and reach is not always realized. Importantly, the Convention CRPD and the SDGs call for better statistics and data collection by states to report on and to guide better practice. In reimagining sport for persons with disabilities, we need to track that progress, and to track progress, we need to know the status quo. Analysis of state reports to CRPD shows that we can improve our reporting on sport. To report better in the future, we need to invest in gathering data internationally comparable disaggregated data on disability inclusion in and through sport, from the population level to organization levels and to community levels. This data can be used in multiple areas of state reporting, to the UN human rights treaty bodies, to regional human rights bodies, and for the voluntary national review process of the SDGs. It can be used to support results-based management and better practice around disability inclusion. Under the Kazan Action Plan, referred to in the UN Action Plan on Sport for Development and Peace, a suite of guides have been developed to enable states and national human rights organizations and civil society to better understand how, why, when, and what to report on in terms of sport and CRPD, aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. These guides can be used to plan and also to reimagine sport policies and accelerate progress towards the goals and aspirations of the SDGs. We need to ensure that sport for persons with disabilities extends from participation to employment to volunteering opportunities. While states are the primary duty bearers when it comes to human rights, other actors within the state also have a role to play, and we need to ensure that everyone can respect, protect, and fulfill human rights obligations. Higher education, as mentioned before, is an important sector that can influence the inclusivity of practitioners and future policymakers. The World Conference of Sports Ministers meets again in mid-2021 in Kenya. And the connection between sport, SDGs, and human rights can significantly look to addressing the inequalities observed during the pandemic. We need to affirm the need to support action and investment in member states, prioritizing sport for persons with disabilities in their national implementation plans and on the SDGs and in their human rights reporting on sport. As we advance plans to reimagine cooperation, we're very conscious in the work that we have done that the connection between sport, human rights, and SDGs is fresh territory for many people. The Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission funded a proposal to socialise the concept nationally. The approach is three-dimensional. Firstly, we will have expert dialogues among government stakeholders, including our National Statistics Office, to look at how we can address sport, SDGs, and human rights nationally. We will have sport sector dialogues on public sector duty relating to sport and rights holder workshops, so as everyone can understand how sport, human rights and SDGs can connect and can be used to advance practice. Through this process, we will create an opportunity for use across other member states. And tomorrow I'm happy to report that we launch our capacity building programme on disability inclusion in sport in Mauritius, which will be used as a hub for practice in neighbouring islands in the Indian Ocean island states. And this capacity building work connects with their monitoring and reporting that leverages SDGs and human rights in sport. Thank you very much for the opportunity to chat to you today.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine, for your elaborated list of achievements and mainly projects that are on the way. And tracking progress, I think it's what we are lacking. How can we answer the gaps if we don't know exactly where are the progress and where are the gaps? So I think that you are going to be very well in demand because your presentation is highly statistical, economical, social, environmental. You cover basically all the issue on sport. And I have to really wish you a lot of dexterity in trying to report all of this in a way that everybody will feel involved. Thank you very much, Catherine, for this thorough work. So now I'm going to present to you, it doesn't need to be presented, but I am going to present Andrew Persson. He is the president of the International Paralympic Committee, president since 2017 and highly energized. I consider you as a crisis leader. And you have mentioned this thing about your leadership. My leadership style is I see myself as a server. I serve a movement, the Paralympic athlete. I didn't know what the movement really was in a Paralympic athlete. And since you were, mentioning the Rising Phoenix, the film that really explained in all its totality what a Paralympian is, I get really very moved, but you can do that. And I know also what is your most obstacle is to have no disability. And this is also new to put it on the table. Great supporter of Paralympian, reacting and standing against disability stigma is what you do best. I want, of course, to ask you what your organization is doing, but you are doing so many multiple things that at the end of the day, everything gets together. And I think that you can also address the young population and tell them how from an internship program that started in a very innocent way, just because you wanted to do something and not be reckless, you became president. So I think the gap here needs some of your energy and some of your explanation. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Hanifa. Thank you for your kind words. I'd like to say hi to all the other panelists. And let me say that I really like the theme of this webinar, Reimagining Cooperation on Sports for Persons with Disability, Leaving No One Behind. Because to not leave anyone behind, we must know who they are and where they are. And often when you mention to someone that we have 1 billion persons with disability in the world, the question comes, so where are they? We can't see them. And I think that this is what we do with the Paralympic movement. Through sport, we make them visible. It's a unique moment in humanity where disability is not only tolerated or respected, it's valued and celebrated. So I think that's what we do with the Paralympic Games. With the Paralympic Games, we offer an incredible platform to the wider disability human rights movement. And we do want to play a major role when it comes to the human rights. The founder of our movement, more than 70 years ago, Sir Ludwig Guttmann, he said, my dream is that every disabled person in the world can become a taxpayer. So this means citizenship. This means being someone active in society, contributing, being a part of the society. So our target, answering your question for next year, It's through the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games to support the UN Decade of Action and achieve the SDGs by driving change in society. We know that the Paralympic Games drives change in the host nation. We have seen changes in legislation in Brazil, in Russia, change in attitude in China. We have seen more 3 million persons with disability in the labor market in the UK because of the Games. We know that the Paralympic movement advances 11 of the 17 SDGs, but we do not only want the change to happen in Japan. We want that the amazing performances of the Paralympic athletes to inspire change and action around the world. The Paralympic must and will be a platform for change next year. And then the question is, how do we intend to do that? It's through a combination of aggressive broadcasting, and please have in mind that in last Summer Games, we had more than 4 billion viewers of the Rio 2016. Communication initiatives such as campaign, events, etc., combined with partnerships with strategic stakeholders. But we need action, we need commitments, and this is what we're targeting for next year, commitments from different sectors of society. We need a business community, we need a development banks to invest in sport as a tool for social inclusion. This is what I call the spider web of relationships and actions that we want to create from the Tokyo Games on. Of course, first of all, we need to provide a platform, and this takes a lot of hard work, especially in the current environment of uncertainty due to the COVID-19 crisis. So we have multiple scenarios to deal with to make sure that the games go ahead next year. But I'm absolutely positive that the games will go ahead next year. And we'll put this best platform in the world at the service of humanity by putting athletes with disability in the spotlight and making the world aware that 15% of the world's population has some type of disability. High performance is the driver, the mean, but the end is to create a more inclusive world through sport, through para-sport, because we believe that the change should and will start with sport. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Keep the movement moving forward, because I can realize what you're saying, that it's a very united movement where you have successfully almost all the member state, the civil society, the private sector, the academia, the youth, the women, the person with disability, of course, indigenous, vulnerable people. I mean, you can, one of the rare person in one shot can address this, we the people. And your passion, your energy is definitively a helper. So I'm sure we will hear from you again. And you didn't have a chance to talk a little bit about your movie. Maybe we will in the second part of the active action. So now, my last, not least, of course, panelist is Mr. Yuri Monzani. He's a technical manager. He follows Intercampus. He's a triathlete, but mainly for me and for you today, he's a football coach. So he has about 30 countries where he uses his sport therapy, and he covers around 10,000 children. For him, the language of football is a joy of being with your friends, and of course, from all over the world. The definition of a good coach is to be positive, enthusiastic, supportive, trusty, focused, goal-oriented, knowledgeable, observant, respectful, patient, and a clear communicator. Well, I'm sure you are all that, and it's with great pleasure that we would like to welcome the panelist segment with a football kick.
Thank
Julie,
you.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Hanifa, Daniela. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for having me today. Intercampus appreciated very much the opportunity to take part in this discussion on something so important as sport and disabilities. I've been working for Intercampus as a football coach and technical manager for 10 years. Intercampus was founded in 1997 by then president of FC Internazionale Milano, Massimo Moratti, and his family. Our philosophy and aim is to give back the right to play to thousands of children from 6 to 13 years old in need all around the world. Football is a bridge between communities and generations and promotes culture of peace, respect, and tolerance. Currently, we operate in 30 countries, and our goals have branched out to advocating equality, inclusion, and fighting discrimination of all sorts. Right now, Intercampus gives back the right to play to about 10,000 children every year. Our project has no talent scouting goal. All the children benefit from our sports activities completely for free, and they receive the original intermatch kit, short and jersey. Among them, there are economically challenged families, kids with different health conditions, children in out-of-home care, and also typically developing children. In terms of disability, we have two main working directions. The first one is dedicated to the association that concern people with health disorders and intellectual impairments. For example, in Italy, we work in collaboration with L'Abilità Onlus, and in Russia, Bulgaria, Poland, Hungary, we involve foundations and special needs schools. We develop specific sports programs for children with autism, hearing loss, attention deficit, and hyperactivity. We propose different programs that promote their wellness and autonomy. The second direction is dedicated to the inclusive football, basically what we do all around the world. Our aim is to engage children with and without physical and intellectual impairments in common activities. Everybody is welcome to attend the trainings so that kids with health issues can play football and not feel discriminated against. Others can play football too, and also learn life skills and values like concentration, autonomy, resilience, self-esteem, and teamwork, so they can use in everyday life. We strongly believe that children with and without disabilities can develop important values during the trainings when they play as equal partners. Well, the pandemic has brought us a huge challenge, finding a way to guarantee the right to play when we are not allowed to travel and our local coaches can't perform any face-to-face activities. So what we did and what we are doing now, we transform our trips into video calls. We provide e-learning for the coaches. We gather up players and their families in conferences. This allows us to remain close to our partners, coaches, children, and their families in such a difficult moment and reinforce our emotional connection. We create multimedia content and offer at-home training schemes for the kids. They include educational games, football challenges, fun workouts, and other activities that can help children to exercise their right to play during the lockdown. We also made some specific videos for children with intellectual impairments. A virtuous example was in Mexico, where there was a child who manifested symptoms of depression triggered by the pandemic. Intercampus got involved and set some activities for him and his brother with physical disabilities, highlighting again our message that inclusion is always possible. As for the future work, our intention is to enhance our remote and digital activities for the period where traveling is out of question. Yet personal visits remain the core of our mission, and Intercampus has a firm will to return to traveling as soon as possible. We want to go on and guarantee the right to play to all the children, with specific attention to those who require more assistance during the pandemic. After all, the adults of tomorrow are the children of today, and even if now the world is going through a tough phase, we won't leave anyone behind. Intercampus is and will be there for the kids, making sure that optimism takes over and believing that the work we do will help build future adults, more resilient, more autonomous, more optimistic, and strong and tolerant.
Thank you so much, Jury. You are instilling values, sport values to children, 10,000 children, it's impressive. I wish you more, of course. You encourage them to be independent. They also focus on ability and not disability. And I think you are also taking care of one side of the COVID problem, which has not been very well detailed, is the depression. And the depression is now stronger because we reached more than 7 months of confinement, and nobody really next to us to explain how we can survive this stage. This webinar has examine current trends, response, and listen to accelerate the SDGs progress for citizens living with disability and to make inclusion and empowerment a reality for all. We have to keep in mind that sport plays a key role in the life of communities of people with disability, the same as it does for people without disability. Through sport, persons with disability acquire vital social skills, develop independence, self-confidence, social awareness, and become empowered to act as agents of change. However, the digital world will shape new ways of living, moving, training, sport in the post-COVID-19, and we will hear about this digital world more at the end of the year. But I would like to add one thing, which is the power of sport as a transformative tool is particularly important for women with disability who often experience double discrimination on the basis of their gender and disability. It is reported that 19% of women with disability are not involved in sport, and women comprise only 1/3 of athletes with disability in international competition. Again, I'm glad that yesterday I saw this movie, Rising Phoenix, because women were present, but it was in the movie. And the other movie I mentioned was Invictus in 2009. And I want to give you 2 sentences from what I learned from this film. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. So I hope all of you could believe in that and show a new way to be not behind. I now give back the floor to Gabrielle, who has diligently put together your questions, and our panel is going to stand ready to reply to any question that they feel they have an enhancement or a solution to bring. So now, Gabrielle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hanifa. Thank you to all the panelists. And the first question that I bring is from Amel Najjar from Children of War Foundation. The question is, are there any plans and programs in place to prioritize sports and physical education for persons with disabilities in a fragile context once COVID restrictions are eased, and is it safe to do so? And if so, what proactive measures will be implemented to show the positive and measurable outcomes in doing so, to further scale sports programming and to provide adequate accessibility devices and to encompass persons with disabilities? The second question is from Parag Namdeo. He says that pandemic has made open the situation which persons with severe disabilities have been always facing: isolation and inability to participate. These include the situation of persons with deaf blindness, who have always lagged behind due to non-accessible facilities and environment. With a huge digital divide, is it still possible to ensure their inclusion in our efforts for recovery in post-pandemic phase? And the last question is from Cecilia Hode, from a co-founder and president of Noah's Ark Foundation and mother of the NBA LA Clippers player, Joakim Noah. And she says that they believe that Noah's Ark Foundation trauma-informed basketball programs that is essential in keeping Chicago at risk youth off the streets and gives other opportunities than gang life. Considering that persons with disabilities have further marginalized due to COVID-19, how can we make sure that government funding will expand availability and access to the power of sports in these populations to support them in their fight against PTSD and trauma? So Hanifa,
sorry, Hanifa.
Oh wait, pardon.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. If we can ask the ambassador if they have comments or any before we take the questions. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Okay. So, dear ambassadors.
Well, thank you very much. If I may, I wrote in the chat that you know, as co-chair, and I'm sure that Alia is sharing this with me, that we need to listen better, and then to go and check in the text, at least, because it's true that what people have mentioned, that we don't differentiate enough with different disabilities. So we can do better. Of course, it would be very important to have data, but for all the SDGs, data is essential, but it's not always feasible. Then the next thing, and that's why the preparation that Daniela has already put in place with that event in December for the next CSOB-D is really essential. The digital divide, it's two different worlds. Those of us who could benefit from a class through the internet, who could keep working through the UN with Zoom and other platforms, and those that don't have access to the internet and that were deprived of basic education. So, you know, in the month ahead, we really have to concentrate better on trying to be more focused of the different kind of disabilities and the different needs of people with disabilities, and then address that digital divide. So your comments have been well taken, and we will debrief, as I said, with you and DESA to go back to our drawing board and try to be more focused and efficient. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Ambassador. Another intervention from the distinguished excellency that we have. Amin.
If we don't have any comments from ambassadors, we can move to the next questions. Thank you, Hanifa.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. Listening is one of the biggest quality that you can have when you are a leader. So now you have three questions, one from Amel, who is the Children of War Foundation. And I would like to know if among my panelists, we have one volunteer. If it's not, if there is no volunteer, I will ask definitively Andrew to come back, because I think there is a problem of finance in the question. So would you be able to give your insight?
So I missed the question. What is the question again? Sorry, on the part of the finance.
Yeah, I think that what the Children of War Foundation is saying, it's she's aware about, she's asking if a person with disability in the context of COVID has also been safe, and is it also measurable? And what is the scale sport programming and accessibility of person with disability?
Well, I think, as we all know, that the COVID-19 crisis has highlighted some of the problems that we have in society when it comes to persons with disability, the isolation, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of programs targeting this population when it comes to physical activity, for example. So I think that there's a problem of a lack of an integrated approach when it comes to persons with disability. Persons with disability should not be seen in isolation. When it comes to sport, it's a combination as any other person. Sport, health, education, inclusion to the labor market. What I think is missing here, and I think it's an integrated approach when it comes to persons with disability. And I think the COVID-19 has highlighted that. I think that has put a light on the problem. And I think that now it should not be a surprise when you see some reports, people say, "Oh, now the pandemic has highlighted some of these inequalities." The inequalities were always there. What we need is to have the safety net of protection organized by governments, but also with the participation of NGOs, the sport organizations such as the International Olympic Committee, not only at the high performance speed, but also supporting the grassroots activities. And we do that through some of the projects through our foundation. But what we need here is, I think, is a more affirmative action from different governments around the world to, let's say, to tackle a situation that was already there, but I think that the pandemic has not uncovered, because it was always there, but has put more light in that question. I don't know if I have answered that, but I think at the end of the day, the integrated approach means resources. We know that there is no such thing as an efficient governmental program if there is not budget behind it. So we need budget to be allocated to this integrated approach. It needs to be a priority. We talk about 15% of the world's population.
No, thank you so much. It's always helpful to hear your side of this issue. It's a problem for everybody, but everybody has a solution. The second question, I think it's for Catherine Carty. And if you want to repeat that question, please, Gabrielle, but I think it's for Catherine. But repeat the question so it's clearer.
So Parag Namdeo he made the remark that the pandemic has made open the situation which persons with severe disabilities have been always facing: isolation and inability to participate. This includes the situation of persons with deaf blindness, who have been always lagged behind due to non-accessible facilities and environment. With a huge digital divide, is it still possible to ensure their inclusion in our efforts for recovery in post-pandemic phase?
Okay, Catherine, you would like to answer that?
Yeah, I appreciate the difficulty there. And I think sometimes when we look at disability inclusion, the temptation is sometimes to look at the easier end in terms of lower levels of disability. And it's really important that we look across the whole spectrum of disabilities to include those who are often left behind. And the idea that there are multiple discriminations you've mentioned before, Harifan, even within that, there are people who find themselves particularly left behind, such as sometimes those with disabilities or the deaf-blind population. The program that I mentioned we're launching tomorrow in Mauritius is covering some of these population groups that are mentioned in the question. And so we are happy that in the programs that we offer, we are including those who have moderate to severe levels of disability and that they are not left behind. We also have a program that targets fitness clubs and health clubs, which you mentioned earlier on in the introduction. And we encourage those clubs to embrace our program called Just Do UFit, which is in community facilities. Again, that they work across the spectrum of disability to include those who have moderate and severe disabilities, including those who are deaf-blind in their offer. We offer in that program supports for people who are engaging, supports for people with disabilities who want to engage in physical activity from home, including how to design an exercise program or how to engage with an exercise program. And so I'll share a link to panelists on how they can find the resources on our Just Do UFit program. It has been delivered in different parts of the world, including in the US and in Spain and in Peru and other countries. But we're expanding that resource and have a range of online resources to ensure that clubs, fitness clubs and centres around the world can include those with disabilities, including those on experiencing moderate to severe disability.
Hanifa, if I may say something on this topic.
Oh, please do, please.
Thank you so much. Just in addition to what my colleague Ambassador Isabel have said, again, you know, the topic about the huge digital divide, and now with the impact of COVID-19 and its severe impact on children who are already affected by poverty and disability. And I just wanted to highlight that, you know, the Secretary General, of course, have very much gave great attention to this issue. And lately, UNICEF has announced the work, the GIGA project, which is mainly talking about connecting every school to the internet. And I think this is something Qatar is very much supportive of, and many countries, of course. And I think this will create this momentum in making sure, you know, children with disabilities and young people with disabilities are still connected and able to enjoy, again, you know, the in terms of enjoy their right to education. Again, when it comes to sports, you know, the work Qatar is doing in preparation of the World Cup, involving persons with disabilities through technological platform. But again, I mean, just to emphasize that the UN is giving great attention to this aspect. UNICEF is doing practical work on the ground, and Qatar is one of the countries who are supporting it even financially. So I just wanted to flag that.
Well, thank you very much.
Hanifa, can I add to that?
Yes.
Just thank you, Ambassador, for mentioning this. I think regarding what Andrew has mentioned and also Victor, the digital inclusiveness is an important tool for all the children and adolescents, of course, and especially for those with disabilities. And with the GIGA project, UNICEF is trying to advance on having all schools connected and to measure the quality of the connection also, so that they can be a hub for the communities, especially the most vulnerable ones in which schools are placed, to be a hub for them to connect. But also schools should be open and have the right facilities to provide inclusive physical activities for all children and adolescents and their families. So as part of it, I think it should be important to understand, as Andrew has mentioned, having good public policies or good policies demands resources and budget allocated and focusing on most vulnerable ones. I think it would be important for us to understand that.
Hanifa, if I can chime in on this one as well. So I think it's important for us to realize too that as we put out these digital platforms, we have to make sure that they're accessible. And I think that's where certainly it would be difficult for some people who are deafblind to be able to access some of this. So what measures are we putting in place? We learned that early on that people were using during COVID, that people were using different platforms. They were using Zoom, they were using Google Meets, they were using Microsoft Teams. And we went and checked the accessibility of each of them and put out guidelines of how you can include people of all different types of disabilities in these platforms, because it's really important as we move more digital to be able to do that. Very, very important. And I just wanted to comment on some of the things Andrew touched on before, is that people with disabilities want to be involved in sport, and we need to be able to give them access to it. And the NGOs need to really think about the diversity that they're the people that they serve and be more diverse in the people that they serve. And also the cities. Cities have to take a role in providing adaptive sports opportunities for kids and for every disability that's out there. And those are some of the roles that we've taken on in our city, but we need to do more, and cities need to be able to provide this, because that's where people who are marginalized go. They go to their cities. They look for these resources. And if the cities don't provide them, how are they going to get to the level of a Paralympic athlete if it isn't there?
Well, thank you very much again to have brought back the infrastructure and the cities. I think that this project that are really in the hand of political people should definitively hear what the civil society on this side and all the person with disability can enjoy. Thank you very much for bringing that back in a lively way in a discussion. And I would like to go back to the third question. I think that the third question comes from Cecilia Rode, and her NGO is the Noah Ark, and deal with the children, the gang, the children in Chicago in the street. And I think she's also asking what kind of financial measure is taken to solve the problem that is generated by this disease. Being homeless in the street and having a gun is a disease. So I think I would give, who wants to take that strong question dealing with children in disarray? Isabel, you want to go back on that? Or I already say Catherine. Isabel.
We have an amazing American Paralympian, and he's also into the Hall of Fame of table tennis. This kid was in a difficult family situation when he was a teenager. He was basically sleeping in the New York subway trains. And then he joined a community center where he discovered table tennis. And well, you know, Tel Leibovitz is his name. I'm sure he's well known from Andrew Parsons. And he graduated with 2 masters from NYU. So, you know, sport is really a tool to education, a path to flourish in what every child can be. So I think that it's the same, you know, it's the same like a post-conflict situation. If you have some basic infrastructure, but most of all, the right educators to get the kids, to teach them, they have to follow all the same rules, you know, whatever side of the street they are. So if you keep the kids busy, you know, maybe we could develop skateboards somewhere in the streets, the parks where they can hang out, you know, where they can have physical activities that they need. And this is terrible for disabled children because they are more at risk, okay? But it's a child is a child. So we need to find ways to make them play and to learn from playing and to be physically active. So, and unfortunately, you know, it's more complicated when it's in poor neighborhood or in post-conflict countries. But I think this is where we need to even put more focus and try to find NGOs to finance and to be, because a state cannot do everything. You know, you cannot always. That's where when I speak at the beginning, I spoke about community. I think that if people take the thing into their hands and then you see that it's working, it's making a difference, then people from government or administration are going to be on board.
Thank you so much, Isabel. I think that we got the message. It's an obstacle for everybody. I think we are together in trying to find a solution, whether financial, social, environmental. We are all ready. After all what we have listened, I think we can draw some strategy and some good input for the next webinar in December dealing with digital world. I mean, I give back the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Hanifa. We have now concluded our panel discussion, and I wish to thank all participants for their many interesting questions and active participation. I will now give the floor to our director, Ms. Bass, for her closing remarks. Ms. Bass, you have the floor. Thank you.
What can I say? I'm very happy. Honestly, sincerely, very happy. The intervention of our ambassadors, I really want to thank you so much, because you have been so pragmatic and gave real examples of what can be done. I really appreciate it a lot. And I have to say that I was also very happy when I heard that the Italian government is going to finance generously a very important project on sport and persons with autism. So for me, this has been also a moment of great joy. The panelists, I mean, the inputs and the substance and the energy, the competence that you have brought to the table, to the discussions, will help us actually to draw some very interesting conclusions and outputs and outcomes that we will translate then through our social media or technical papers. And as I said, we would really like to utilize these insights for the meeting, part of the meeting at least, that will take place, the multi-stakeholder dialogue on the 7th of September, and then carry on the conversation to COSP and also to the Commission for Social Development. And I have to thank the moderator. It's not easy to moderate, Hanifa, but you have really moved very easily throughout all the different topics. And if I may say, it is very seldom in my UN experience to see that ambassadors stay all the time, in spite of having a General Assembly going on. And they intervene even during the second part when there are experts and panelists. It happens so seldom. So this is another signal to me that we really wanted to work together. We together use the space given by the United Nations to be united on this topic. Thank you very much. Also to those who patiently participated. There are many, many participants and many people registered also. So this is another sign that this topic actually will have to be discussed even further in more specific and details. And next time, hopefully, we will have more components of the private sector on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ms.
We want
Bass.
to take a family picture, I mean.
Yes. So thank you so much. And we can take maybe a picture now before we leave. If you can all put your camera on. Let me see. So 1, 2, sorry, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much again. And on behalf of you and DESA, we thank all of our partners, distinguished speakers, ambassadors. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you. Stay healthy, stay connected. We now end the webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.